Between school, your friends, and social media, answers are everywhere. But where can you find the truth? Welcome to the StudentCast. We're asking for a friend so that you don't have to.
Welcome to the StudentCast. My name is Ka'eo, and I'm here with my friend Brynn.
What's up, guys? So happy to be back with you all today. We're back asking a question for a friend so you don't have to.
Exactly.
And we're here with our friends. What's up, guys? Go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Sydney. I'm a senior at Buchanan.
And I'm Jake, and I'm a junior at Fresno Christian.
Let's go.
We love these two.
Yes, honestly, big fans. We're great that they're here.
Iconic.
I'm glad that they took time of their busy schedules.
Yes, busy schedules. Okay,
yes.
Speaking of busy schedules, they're just telling us about what their morning was like.
Yeah.
You guys do a lot of things. What are you involved in? What do you do during your week?
Yeah, so I run cross country and track.
And I play baseball.
Wow.
Cool.
Okay,
Very
we play pickleball.
Oh,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes, exactly.
Full circle moment.
Come
We're
on
back
now.
to pickleball.
Yes.
How many
Sponsor
times
us.
are we going to talk about pickleball on the podcast?
Just as many times as we talk about ice cream.
Absolutely. But yeah, you guys are busy and you have a lot going on. And we've been hearing from people and a lot of friends asking this question of how can I prioritize my faith as a student athlete?
Yeah, they're just like, look, how do I balance both?
Yeah.
Because I'm passionate about sports
Mm-hmm.
and I'm also passionate about Jesus, but sometimes I feel like they get in the way of each other and I just don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And so I thought, you know what, Brynn? We got some really cool friends
Yeah.
that I think are doing it really well.
They are doing it really well. And I think, I don't know, you asked them a great question earlier that I want to just kind of hear from them again. What makes you guys love your sport? When you think about why you even play sports, what comes to mind?
When I
Yeah,
think,
Jake, take it away.
Yeah, when I think about the root of why I played baseball, I think of my dad. I think the first memory I have is playing catch with him, which is super special.
Precious.
And I think obviously when you're a little kid, you're like, yeah, I'll do whatever my dad wants me to. He wants me to play baseball, I'll play. And then I kind of really fell in love with the sport when I was in 4th or 5th grade.
Yeah.
And ever since then it's just been a blast.
That's really cool.
That's
Isn't your
so
dad a
sweet.
coach now?
Yeah,
too?
yeah. So he's an assistant coach at my high school. So
Wow.
he's been my
That's
coach.
so
He was my
sweet.
coach through T-ball and
Yeah.
Little League and stuff. And then in middle school, he took a break and wanted me to kind of figure some things out on my
Yeah.
own.
Mm-hmm.
And then he hopped on the high school team before I joined the team
Mm-hmm.
and kind of got comfortable there. And so now he's my first base coach.
That's
so
awesome.
it's really
precious.
special.
Really
So
yeah.
cool.
baseball is a family relationship
Yeah,
for you
totally.
too.
It's at the Wyatt house, there's always a baseball game on the house. It's always it's awesome.
That was a
That's
good
so
time.
sweet.
Yeah, for me, it's a little bit different. I didn't start running until 7th grade.
Mm-hmm.
That was because the junior high coach reached out to me and was like, hey, you should try cross country this year. I'm like, okay, I'll give it a try. And so ever since then, I've just been doing it and I've enjoyed it. And I've met really amazing people through it. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really
so
cool. Yeah, I got into pickleball when my friends invited me to play, and it was just a really good time. And now I like to consider myself a D7 athlete. So.
Oh, absolutely.
Naturally
absolutely. Made it to the quarterfinals
We
in
did.
a tournament.
We
Wow.
did.
Iconic.
Yeah, it was good.
It's so funny. I love hearing Sid talk about her stuff with cross country and track because you wouldn't assume it by the way that she's talking about herself, but girl just humbly slid into our conversation earlier how her and her
It was
4x4
casual.
relay was seconds off the national record.
She was like, yeah, I was just we attempted just a couple seconds off right now. It's what? It's a big deal.
Yeah, just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, you guys are awesome. And your schedules are crazy. You're always running from practice to practice and then you're being a friend, you're being just a human being on top of it. So what would you guys say, I don't know, what gets in the way of you guys potentially prioritizing your faith?
okay, we were talking about this earlier, kind of our schedules.
Yeah, yeah.
Just because, being an athlete, we're busy. So for my sport, it requires a lot of commitment and we're training basically year round. So I think that can get in the way of just really prioritizing my faith. And it's definitely hard, but I just have to kind of learn to balance it and work it out.
That's good.
Yeah, for me, you have to wake up in the morning and you have to go to school and you have to try in school because you have to perform in the classroom in order to perform on the field as a student athlete. And you have to do your homework during school hours so that you can have enough time to go to practice and actually have relationships with people and be a human. And then on top of that, add travel ball and just schedules get busy. So I think the thing for me is planning and trying to prioritize oh, like this event really matters, or like, hey, I gotta make it to Wednesday night. Like that's important. So I'm gonna have to like communicate with my coach, like, hey, I'm gonna miss next Wednesday's practice. So scheduling is very like, it's a big part of our lives.
Yeah. Do you guys ever get overwhelmed? Just like friend to friend here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
What does that look like for you, Sid?
Sometimes it's just like hard to find rest for myself.
Yeah.
So that is overwhelming. And then sometimes I can get a little crazy and grumpy with my family.
Yeah, I mean, no one blames you.
But yeah, I just try to do the best I can. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I can find myself getting really anxious when I start to, when the schedule's crazy and when, playoffs are rolling around. Anxiety kind of creeps in many different little forms, which overall kind of like takes over your life. And then the worst part about that is when you realize how anxious you actually are.
Yeah.
And when you kind of bring it back to something that you love, which like, I'm anxious because of baseball, or I'm anxious because of track. It's like, but I love that. Like, that's like, I love doing that. Why is it causing all this anxiety? And I think it's just because it's a lot,
Yeah. How have you guys, like, through your experience with your sports, like, I don't know, you love it and like there's so much passion there. And so have you faced like disappointment in those realms where like you have to wrestle with that with the Lord? I don't know. What's that been like for you guys?
yeah, for me, I mean, being an athlete, there's always going to be injury and other things that can like stop you from practicing or competing. And for me, like this past track season was a little bit rough because I started with a little injury, then I had to work through that, and then I got better. And then towards the end of my season, when it was like championship time, I got sick, which was really unfortunate and not fun.
Yeah.
But I just had to remember that like my identity is not in my sport and it's in God. My sport is just something I do, not who I am. So
That's
just
good.
That'll preach.
yeah, I've just been constantly reminding myself that throughout the process.
That's so good.
Yeah, my story is similar. I at the beginning of my freshman year, I ended up tearing my shoulder.
Ouch.
Which I sat out my whole freshman year, which was it was really disappointing. I was really, there was a lot of doubt, and if I'm being straight up, I was angry at God because I was like, what did I do to deserve this? And why I've put so much work in, in the past summer, in the past off season, just to, get disappointed and just get let down. And I ended up turning more towards the sport and towards the rehab to try to fix it. I'm like, okay, if I can just fix myself on the outside, if I can just get through this injury and get through physical therapy, then I'll come back even stronger and better. But I was still angry at God. And so at the end of the season, when I was cleared of all my, restrictions and stuff, and I was like, hey, you're good to go, you're good to play, I still felt kind of like empty and angry. And that was when I realized that like the root of my actual injury was my mentality towards God. And so that was something that I had to fix. And that took a little while, but once it was fixed, that was when I really felt like I was healed.
Dang.
Yeah.
Instinct. Yeah, that's hard. I think like logically you're like, well, losing baseball for that season is what made me feel like this. So if I just work my way to get that back, then that'll be what fixes everything.
And that was my identity at the time. It's like, I play baseball. I was playing, I was trying to balance school ball and travel ball. And like, if, I'm walking down the halls, it's like, oh, he plays baseball. Like that was like what I was known for. So when that was taken away from me, I was like, who am I now?
Yeah.
And that's because I wasn't having God at the center of my life. So that was a problem that was before the actual injury. I already had an injury before then. And that was that, I didn't have God as my number one in my heart.
Yeah, I could say injury of the heart. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess like follow-up question for you in that. So you are back on the field.
Yeah.
Like we got to come out to quite
Number
a few
one
Fresno
fans,
Christian baseball games this year.
With our signs.
But you're back on the field. And so what is that like for you now with like, I don't know, that realization that it was your identity before? How do you keep that in check as you're back on the field?
I think my prayer life is a lot better. And I think with sports, it's like, you'll go see the football players like pray before the game and all that stuff. And it's kind of like blown up and like, on TV and stuff.
It is, yeah.
But for me, it's like, I never used to step back and like actually like pray to God. And if I did, it was kind of like, God, like, please help me win this game. Like, I need to win this game. Like, please help me, like, hit a triple. Yeah, exactly. But now my prayer life is more like, instead of me just trying to give the glory to myself and try to get like, all the success towards me, I thank him for giving me the opportunity to like be back on the field.
Wow.
And I realized that like he can take it away from me just as easily as he did in my freshman year. So now it's like I when I pray to him, it's like I'm thanking him. I'm giving him the glory for me, stepping across that line. So.
Yeah, man, Jake, that reminds me of Colossians 3:17. It says, "And whatever you do in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him." And so I think, like, as you're talking about how baseball now isn't like for your glory or for like your ego or your pride, but it's just to honor him with the gifts that he's given you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's something that like applies to not just athletics and sports. That's anything in our life. And so, like, Sid, how have you seen that in your own sports journey? Like, how do you feel like you're able to, like, give glory to God through the gifts that he's given you?
I think mainly just humbleness, being able to be like, no, I did great, but I didn't do that for me. Like, God helped me do that. Like, I'm not doing it for the glory of myself. I was talking to my sister this morning, kind of asking her some advice. I'm like, what do you think about this? And she's like, yeah, you're kind of like competing for the audience of one, for God, not for everyone else to cheer you on. Like,
yeah, not
really,
for like your own hype, not for your own status. Yeah. That's so good.
Wow, that's deep. To like do things just for the audience of one. Like, it doesn't matter if the whole crowd wasn't applauding.
Yeah.
But recognizing that God is, like, because I was doing it for him and not their approval.
Yeah.
Right? Because we ultimately want the approval. We don't need the approval of man. Like, what are we doing? We're not trying to gain, man's approval, but we are trying to gain the Lord's and recognizing that we already have that. So if we already have God's approval, that pours out differently when we are on the field, right?
And I feel like we enjoy the sport more when we like when God's kind of given us that. Like when we give the glory back to him, I have so much more fun playing baseball.
Yeah. That's real. Well, what would you guys say? I mean, you guys talked a little about like communicating with coaches to be able to go to like events that you for church or like being at a Wednesday night or things like that. But I'd just be curious to hear like tangibly or like what you see week to week for yourselves. How do you guys prioritize your faith as a student athlete?
I think a lot of it is just making time for God, making time to like be in your Bible or go to church and stuff, which it's definitely hard. Time management is not easy.
Yeah.
But also like having that mindset that like it's not something you just check off. It's you just have to make it a part of your daily routine. So yeah.
I mean, like when you care about something, you'll make time for it.
Yeah.
Like for me, like when baseball was more in the center of my life, I made time for it and it was my day. But now it's like I want to prioritize my faith. And so that comes first. And that's something that's like, that's a choice that I have to make every single day. That's not just a mindset that like, I flip a switch and it's like, okay, now
every day.
Now my schedule's all clear and I can, read my Bible for an hour and be great.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a choice that you have to make and there's sacrifices that come with that.
Yeah.
And there's uncomfortable conversations with coaches and there's a lot of things that play into it. But the anxiety and the stress of all of that goes away when you're getting rewarded with actual time spent towards your faith.
Yeah.
And that helps. And that's huge.
That's big. I just have to ask this question because I feel like our listeners are like, yeah, this is great. But like the fear side of me is if I tell my coach no, then that means I don't get to play. Because like we're all talking about performance here. That's what we're talking about. If I do good, I get rewarded. And that's kind of how it works in sports. And so it's like when you have to be like, well, no, I want to perform well, but this is a priority of mine. Like, how do you deal with that? I feel like that's probably what a lot of our students are struggling with is like, but I want to do well here. But if I say no here, I don't go to practice. So then that means I don't get to play. Like, how do you manage those things?
For me, I mainly just try to like make everything work. So if I have a sports event, I don't just like skip youth group. I'm like, okay, I'll come late if I can.
Yeah.
Or like winter retreat last year, I had to come a little bit late because I had, I think I had a track meet or something. So, I mean, sacrifice goes kind of both ways. So just like, for me, that's what I've been doing.
Yeah.
Like, coming late, at least you're still there, being with community and stuff.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I think communication's the biggest thing. I'm not talking about my dad when I say my coach. I'm talking. I have other coaches.
Hey, Dad, I won't be there.
I'm not gonna be there. I got youth. I think that like my relationship with my other coaches on my baseball team has helped a lot because even though they want me to succeed on the baseball field, I mean, I kind of have an advantage. I go to a Christian school, which doesn't mean that like, that doesn't mean that Christianity and all that stuff is at the root of every single thing. It's
for sure, yeah.
But it helps. It helps. It's great. So I think they're a little bit more understanding when I say, hey, I might have to leave in the 6th inning to pull up to youth group in my baseball gear a little bit later.
Yeah.
But just know that I'm going to work my hardest and I'm going to give it my all in those 6 innings.
Yeah.
But after that, like I'm going to get my God time.
Yeah.
I'm going to hear the end of Ka'eo's message, So yeah.
I appreciate that. Yeah, because that was even my struggle too. I was talking to some of my friends who were like, look, I really want to go ahead and like do this sport, but I feel like God's calling me here. How do I do both? And so I'm really glad you guys addressed that. Like, honestly, you can.
Yeah.
It just takes a little bit of work.
Yeah.
It's hard, but it's possible.
Yeah. Okay. I think sometimes we give up when it's too hard.
I think this might be going against some of what we were just saying, but I think the church is outside of the building too, right?
Yeah.
And so I think if like Sid, when you've like missed Wednesday nights, or like even you were in student leadership this past year, and it's like, yeah, you weren't at every student leadership meeting because you're in like Florida at some meet. I don't know, like these random places. But I think your community, like plugging into that outside of just like viewing your faith outside of a Wednesday night, in the sense of like you're prioritizing this, you guys are prioritizing your faith day in, day out. And so, yeah, if you miss a Wednesday night because you have a like important game, that's not where your faith is like rooted in. You're prioritizing that in the day-to-day in your relationships and all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what they just did is they just shattered the fact that I think we like put God in compartments. That God is only on a Wednesday or at Hume or at a retreat or blah, blah, blah. But like we're just hearing right now that actually, no.
God's in the midst of all of this.
Yeah.
Like
Yes,
he
he
is
is.
day to day on the field with
on
you,
and
off
off
the
the
field.
field.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think that kind of helps a lot. People being like, okay, well then I can prioritize my faith. Then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to ask one question.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Oh, there's been multiple questions asked today. But, yeah.
That's my 9th question in this podcast. Sometimes we don't want to prioritize our faith in sports because we want to belong to a team that might not actually believe in Jesus.
Ooh, this will preach. I'm so glad you asked this.
I'm asking for a friend that has asked me several times. Sometimes I choose not my faith, I choose my team. And so I just want to know, like, for people who may be struggling, maybe you experienced that yourself. Like, how do you even like be like, look, because like the Bible says, like we are ambassadors of Christ. We are people's first impression. We are the banner of the Lord for those who do not know. And so like for me, I'm just asking a question for you guys. Like, how do you do that on your team?
I think, so for me, I don't go to a Christian school and there's a bunch of different people on my team. I kind of just view it as God uses us wherever we are at.
Yeah.
So on our team, we're not all going to be Christians, obviously, but we can use that as a way to kind of shine light in some people's lives. And like, so for my team, I help pray before every races, just to kind of shine that light.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that you have to hate your team though, right? Because
Yeah,
sometimes we are under the
no.
impression if we disagree, then we can't be for each other,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think we just have to be very encouraging and loving to all of our team members.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
cool.
love God and love others.
Yeah.
For me, we had a really, really good senior class this year. I think they took up like 70% of our lineup. Like they were great. And I love these guys and they love Jesus and they were such good leaders. And kind of seeing them in like the playoffs, kind of as they were kind of like loosening on the reins and kind of trying to give it to the incoming juniors and the incoming seniors. That was a really cool teaching moment to see how they led lovingly towards the freshmen and the sophomores.
Yeah.
And like I go to a Christian school, but there's a lot of opportunities like in the dugout or, at practice to still, preach and even to just still kind of like shine that light to them or to point them in the right direction.
Totally.
And so seeing those seniors kind of like give me the reins and kind of like point me towards like how to lead them. I mean, it was amazing. It was great.
Yeah,
That's
that's
cool.
awesome. And I think like in the question you're asking, that just brings us full circle to like why it is so important to be tethered like to the Lord in those moments and to have community outside of that team that like can kind of like stir you on in that ministry field. Like for the question that you're asking for your friend that's like, I choose my team over my faith and like I want to belong to this team so bad. Like
I'm doing
we're
things I would never do.
designed for community. We like want to belong places. And so I think for your friend, it's like, man, okay, that even more so means you need to be like really tethered to the Lord in those moments, like praying before you're entering into those conversations with your teammates. And yeah, we might have to sacrifice some of those like relationships, or we might have to stand out in a way that we don't like to stand out in those situations. But
and like also, you don't always have to find community in just your teammates. Like teammates are great community, don't get me wrong. But when you have Brynn and Ka'eo in your life group in the stands cheering you on during your baseball game, like that to me is so much more powerful than just my teammates. Like it just is. And that helps me like choose like, hey, like I gotta prioritize my faith because, you know, I can get so wrapped up in like trying to fit in and trying to, you know, be one of the guys or trying to just be you know, like my identity. I try to get wrapped up in that identity of being a baseball player, but kind of having that reminder that like I still have a family and friends and people that want to point me towards God. And you got Brynn screaming down first base line, go Jay! Like that was more of a reward than anything I accomplished during my like actual season. So
yeah, for me, I have a close group of friends outside of my sport. Some of them do other sports, and my life group and my mentors. Like, it's just great to get plugged into that community because they can help hold me accountable and push me closer to Christ.
That's so good.
That's awesome.
Well, man, I mean, there was so much gold here today, and I pray like. Even if you're not an athlete, I think hearing some of the things these two said applies to just like our walk with the Lord in general, and prioritizing Him above all the things around us that want to like gear or tear us away from that. And so I don't know, what would you like sum up 3 things to take away from today?
I mean, I think there's so many. I think the first one I'd probably say is, it sounds like number 1, our identity needs to be in Christ. It needs to be rooted in the Lord.
Not what you do.
And not what we do, because if that's what happens, then we will live and die by other people's affirmations or their non-affirmations.
Truth.
And then the second thing it sounds like is that we actually have a mission field, whether we believe it or not. Wherever we are influencing others. We're leading people towards something.
Yeah.
And if we're not leading people towards something, then we're being led to something else.
Yeah.
And then I also heard from our friends here that the third thing is we just have to recognize that. I mean, I really love what Sid said. We're doing it for the audience of one. So all the things that we're doing is just to glorify the Lord.
Yeah.
And if we keep that our main focus, then like it's possible for us to prioritize our faith no matter what we're doing.
It's so good. Well, guys, we are so grateful for you, and like just want to affirm you in this space that we have seen you guys really like live out what it looks like to balance being a really committed athlete and prioritize your faith and be a light in these spaces that the Lord's put you in. And so we're grateful for you and the impact that you have on our lives and the students around us that we know. And so we're so glad our friends got to hear from you today.
I'm really pumped.
But we'll see you next time on the Well StudentCast, where we're asking questions for friends so you don't have to.
Yeah. Okay.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Well StudentCast. As always, don't forget to subscribe and tell your friends about us. For more information about the Well Student Ministries, visit thewellcommunity.org/students.